我们今天这个视频说一下美国的现任副总统这个万斯，很多人尤其是华人朋友对万斯很有微词，尤其是这次对泽连斯基的这种傲慢的这种态度，这个惹怒了这个很多爱好和平的人士，有一些民主人士啊。这两天呢有一个视频呢，就是解读万斯在欧洲慕尼黑安全会议上的一些发言。当然他的解读可能跟华人朋友的有一些解读可能不一样，我觉得这个解读可能是更接近于万斯的真实的水平，因为华人现在这个媒体圈呢解读的东西完全是情绪化的，没有多少价值。所以我今天推荐这个视频呢，这个价值应该是非常高的，它可能给我们展现出一个不一样的万斯，不能说不一样的万斯，是我们华人不是我们想象的那样。所以今天的视频非常重要，我们希望一直看到最后，我们一起再来点评讨论一下，请看视频。
Vice President Vance's speech to the conference has ruffled quite a few feathers in Europe.
In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
J.D. Vance back in Munich with a truth bomb.
Well, there has been a maelstrom of controversy about J.D. Vance. Last week he spoke at the Munich Security Conference, but he chose not to speak just necessarily about security issues, i.e. NATO contributions, but rather the larger problem with Europe itself. And that controversy still continues today. Basically what J.D. Vance said was, we have to get along, Europe and the United States. We are twins of the Western tradition. But my God, it's getting hard for you. You go after and persecute people who object to abortion. You take American tech companies and try to censor them, even when they conduct interviews in the United States. When Elon Musk talked to Donald Trump on X, you wanted to censor it. When a election didn't go the way that the left wanted in Romania, they wanted to stop it. Others have said within Germany that the alternative for Deutschland, if they were to be a majority party in the next election, they might cancel it. They went crazy. Oh my gosh, the defense secretary of the minister of Germany got right up. This is unsustainable. This is unacceptable. But nobody said it was untrue. It was absolutely true.
The repercussions and the ripples from that speech are still going on in Europe. The Vice President did something that isn't normally done at shindigs like Munich. You're meant to turn up to places like the Munich Security Conference, tell everyone else to increase defense spending, not increase your own defense spending, and go away and do nothing. And instead of doing that, J.D. Vance turned up to Munich and told his hosts some home truths. And they were home truths that his hosts really didn't want to hear.
The so-called libertine, free-loving, open society of Europe is very closed. It's a one-party system in the sense that they only allow left-wing views. It's to the left of the radical American Democratic Party.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
In front of the Europeans who were reportedly just stunned in their seats, uncomfortable, shuffling, when it comes to free speech, which is, Europe has just been absolutely abysmal on, and immigration, which, take what I said about free speech times 10.
Germany should be very careful, and also should Europe, because the subtext of that speech wasn't explicitly voiced, but it was there. His critics said, oh, he's just talking to the MAGA people at home. He wasn't. He wasn't talking to the French ministers. He wasn't talking to the MAGA people at home or the American people in general. He was talking to the people of Europe, and they support him.
He did not mince words.
Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe, and we believe those things are certainly connected.
Vance said, among other things, that the big threat to his mind to Europe is actually in Europe. It's within Europe.
Because we are going to see possible radical changes in the German government, some Eastern European governments, but especially the French government and maybe the British government the next time. And they're going to be national populists. And he was telling them, you have a right to stand up and do what? His criticism was multifaceted. Close your borders. Legal-only immigration. Up your defense budget. Allow for free speech.
The response to his speech was, as many of you will have noticed, pretty astounding. There's a fellow by the name of Christoph Heusken. He was an advisor to Angela Merkel back in the day, and he's chairman of the Munich Security Conference.
Let me conclude, and this becomes difficult. It is clear that our rules-based international order is under pressure.
Heusken responded to J.D. Vance's speech by, among other things, crying. That's right. He decided that he was running out of words and just too emotional about it all, which I'm sure we can all agree is the kind of leadership we want to see in Europe. His colleagues gathered around him and gave him a hug and talked about how stunning and brave Heusken was for not being able to speak.
Difficult.
To do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief.
It looks like the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz didn't like JD's speech at all. After Vance stepped off the stage, he was met with the leader of the Alternative for Germany party, which Elon Musk has publicly endorsed. The country's intelligence agencies have designated this party as an extremist organization. In response to JD's comments, Scholz says Germans will not accept foreign interference in their politics.
Really reject any idea of cooperation between parties, other parties, and these extreme right parties. I think there is a strong consensus between all relevant parties in Germany that they won't do so. I hope this will last and continue. But it is absolutely sure and necessary to say it is not others to give us the advice to cooperate with these parties which we are not working with for good reasons, especially when looking to the history of our country.
Perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. This last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. In the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation.
Vice President Vance's speech to the conference has ruffled quite a few feathers in Europe.
What did he say to ruffle them? I don't know.
He was talking about the freedom of speech and migration in Europe.
I heard his speech, and he talked about freedom of speech, and I think it's true in Europe. It's losing. They're losing their wonderful right of freedom of speech. I see it. I mean, I thought he made a very good speech, actually, a very brilliant speech. Yeah. Europe has to be careful. And he talked about immigration. And Europe has a big immigration problem. Just take a look at what's happened with crime. Take a look at what's happening in various parts of Europe. I thought his speech was very well received, actually. I've heard very good remarks.
In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town. And under Donald Trump's leadership, We may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
We've gone through the Biden nightmare at home. We know what it was like to go hard left. Don't go that way. Deregulate, cut taxes, free up the economy. And they got very angry about that. It was almost as if they knew that was true, but they could not admit it. Germany and Europe better be very careful. Germany's fertility rate is 1.45. Europe's in aggregate is only about 1.5. We're at least 1.6. Their energy is 4 times ours. And BMW and Audi and Mercedes cannot compete. Why? Because they've gone full green New Deal, so to speak, and shut down coal, nuclear, natural gas plants. They have 16% of the population was not born in Germany. France is almost as bad. And they do not assimilate, intermarry, and integrate like we do. And they're critical of the United States that pays the greatest proportion of the NATO budget and who puts Europe under its nuclear shield. And they are damning us. They run a $240 billion surplus with trade. And how do they do it? Because we're lazy and unproductive? No. We are more productive and we have cheaper power rates and a more open economy than they do, but they have asymmetrical tariffs. Add it all up, and Germany is in a very dependent place. So is Europe. J.D. Vance was trying to speak truth to power, so to speak, and they didn't want to hear it. And what's going to happen in the next year, people in Europe are going to rise up, these populist movements. And I think what he's telling all of them, this could be another start of a wonderful relationship because these fossilized, ossified governments do not reflect the people of Europe.
If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump. You need democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results? But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens.
There is not a single company that's getting started today that has a desire to locate an office directly inside of the UK or Europe. Why? Because the regulatory framework will now come and really go after you if they don't like a single thing that you're doing. If you add all of these things up, it all goes back to the root cause that JD's identifying. If you can't say it, you can't fix it. And so they have to decide what page they're on.
To believe in democracy is to understand that each of our citizens has wisdom and has a voice. And if we refuse to listen to that voice, even our most successful fights will secure very little. As Pope John Paul II, in my view, one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other, once said, "Do not be afraid." We shouldn't be afraid of our people, even when they express views that disagree with their leadership. Thank you all. Good luck to all of you. God bless you.
J.D. Vance just laid it all out. His vision, his warnings, and the challenges. Whether you agree or disagree, one thing's clear. He's a force in the political landscape. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a deep dive into the stories that matter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
那这个万斯在这个慕尼黑安全会议上可能说了一些欧洲的一些槽点，欧洲的武备荒废已久，所以他现在即使向冯德莱恩推出这个8000亿的这个计划呢，看似非常的美好，实际上没有一点用，因为它只是一个提案，在欧盟通过以后还要提交各个国的国会批准，各个国的国会全部批准了之后才能实施的，所以没有任何价值。你不要以为他今天开个会，明天这个1000多亿美金就到了乌克兰战场，不可能的。他即使开了这个会之后，然后每个国家的国会再批准，然后才能实施，这个是最快也是4年以后的。如果欧洲开始实施， 啊，即便是说他现在这个排除万难，这根本不可能的事，咱们现在就说的可能了。好，开始实施了，实施也是4年以后的开始实施，开始有成果也是10年以后了，这14年以后。所以现在乌克兰真正帮乌克兰的还是美国，还是北约，欧洲是欧洲病夫，它没屌用，知道吧？所以这个慕尼黑安全会议实际上在指责欧洲，你们自己要搞一点军费。你看现在德国、欧洲的主要的问题，其实还不是说这个技术问题，主要的还是高税收、高福利捆住了他的手脚，是吧？你如果要发展这个国防开支，你比如说按这个冯德莱恩的这个设想，拿出来8000亿欧元，是吧？然后来建，这个是没问题的。但是这8000亿钱从哪里来？各个国家谁出，是吧？每人出多少？那这个是要争论一番的。你比如说离这个俄罗斯近的啊，我出多一点；离俄罗斯远的他不愿意出的，这个事情不好办呐。另外一个像德国现役军人这么大个国家，现役军人只有18万现役军人。如果说德国要把现役军人是吧提高3倍到60万，其实60万也不算多，你就算咱60万的话，那么他的国防预算加上他的配套，加上他的军人的福利还有训练等等，他的国防开支可能到现在的基础上要增加5倍。那么德国他有没有这个钱呢？国会愿不愿意出这个钱呢？那是不可能的。包括法国现在的社会福利政府赤字日益扩大，他现在哪有钱来增加国防开支啊？现在法国的国防开支在北约中现在是比较高的，它也只是2% GDP 的2%多一点。你如果让它翻1倍到4%，他哪来的钱呢？他政府的赤字要扩大多少倍呀？这老百姓你敢把他的福利减一点吗？你减他的福利，老百姓马上上街，政府垮台。所以说欧洲的问题在这里。所以乌克兰他唯一能帮助他的只有美国。欧洲呢，像乌克兰战争3年，欧洲没有增加一条军工工业的生产线，没有。豹式坦克的生产线，欧洲乌克兰战场最稀缺的，增加了没有？没有。哪怕最简单的2战以后的技术的155榴弹炮，这是乌克兰大量需要的。有没有增加一条生产线？没有，欧洲没有。而且不但没有，而且欧洲在这乌克兰战争这几年是俄罗斯能源的最大买家，你这想象不到的呀！你一边打仗，你一边是给这个俄罗斯大量的提供这个钞票，你让乌克兰怎么打，是吧？另外一个，这个乌克兰战争如果失败的话，对谁影响大？对美国影响大还是对欧洲影响大？当然对欧洲影响大，所以欧洲应该在乌克兰战争中起到更大的作用。这就是万斯要说的话的这个意思，所以大家不要是有点曲解了。另外一个说呀，万斯这个人，他现在已经是未来美国总统的有力的候选人，这你不得不承认这个事实。他已经是美国民族主义的马杆党的一个领袖级的人物了。即使他以后不当总统，在美国政坛都要给他留好位置的。所以这个万斯是很重要的一个人物。所以我们现在华人的这个媒体把万斯骂得像小丑一样，是吧？他在国内确实很有争议，但是这个人在政治当中的作用以后只会越来越大，这是已经是一个事实了。而且他在欧洲的影响也是在非常的扩大，包括欧洲也有一帮马杆党，也把万斯视为这个领袖。所以这个事情我是今天是这么解读的。我希望我今天的这个视频呢，能对大家对万斯呢有所更全面的认识，并不是改观，而是更全面的认识。 提高自己的认知。这就是今天的视频，谢谢。